Barnes, Head of Terrorism Research at George Washington University's Program on Extremism. Here with me today is Senior Research Fellow Jennifer Baker, as we continue providing a chronological account of the evolution of the Hamas terrorist organization abroad, as well as its U.S.-based infrastructure, in an attempt to cut through the myriad of false narratives and terroristic rhetoric that is being woven into mainstream narratives in our country today. For many, Hamas was an unknown entity prior to October 7th, 2023, when they brutally killed 1,200 people and took 140 people hostage, many of whom are still in captivity today. But Hamas's brutality began decades ago, as we have begun to explore in this series.
So, Laura, when we left off last, we had seen Hamas initiate a violent suicide bombing campaign in Israel, and that threatened the peace process between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And we talked about how the U.S.-based front organizations continued their funding and propaganda efforts.
Yes, we did. We ended in 1994, but 1995 was no less violent.
السلام عليكم. عليكم السلام يا شيخ. هلا. تسمع في إذاعة لندن؟ وينها؟ ما سمعتهاش؟ لا وين؟ على 13000 حطيت لك على رقم 9 يا زلمة. طيب هي رقم 9. في عملية حلوة طلعت. رقم 9 قلت لي؟ 13660. تسمعها؟ هي اسمعها عندي. بتوسوس. سمعها عندك كيف؟ العملية الانتحارية التي نفذها أحد نشطاء حركة حماس في ترابيزون وفي تل أبيب في الدفاع الثاني. سامع؟ ألو. أيوه. سامع؟ بس مش جاي عندي أنا ليه؟ له عملية المهم. في بيت ليد، قرية بيت ليد. وين هذه؟ في عند تل أبيب. أيوه. 18 قتيل جندي و60 جريح. يا الله. تفجيرين ورا بعض. المهم اذا عندك تلفزيون اطفيه وحط الراديو واطلع. هاي سامعها عندك كيف جاي؟ انا عندي مش جاي. سبحان الله العظيم. بدك امتين انت معنا عندك اشكال. هسه جابوا خبر وبعدين بيعملوا تعليقات عن العمليات السابقه. يلا خير ان شاء الله. يلا تابع شو عشان بجوز يجيبوا شيء معلش انا سمعتها في لندن هسه. يلا خير ان شاء الله. السلام عليكم.
Here we are listening to a call between two HLF officers, Abdulrahman Odeh and Mohammed El-Mazain, on January 22nd, 1995, where Abdulrahman Odeh tells Mohammed El-Mazain a beautiful operation has occurred in Beit Lead.
So, Laura, what happened in Beit Lead on this? What was it, January 22nd, 1995?
Yes, it was a suicide bombing.
It's another attempt by the extreme Islamic terrorist groups to achieve the political goal of putting a halt, suspension of the peace process.
This is what leaders of a U.S.-based charitable operation called beautiful?
Yes, and here is what the IAP Information Office disseminated about it. This particular communique was faxed to the HLF's chairman of the board, Mohammed El-Mazain, the same person on the call about this beautiful operation. Take a look at this. It is a special report about the heroic operation in Beit Lead, and the report says an eyewitness described the scene to a news reporter as where nothing remained except fragments of human bodies and scattered debris. The IAP communique says another eyewitness said that at the site of the explosion, he saw pieces of bodies. The communique also notes it was believed that Yahya Ayash, known as the engineer, was responsible for preparing the explosives. We're going to talk much more about that bomb maker, Yahya Ayash, in the next episode.
And from that AP footage, it seems like these attacks did serve to threaten the peace process, just as Hamas wanted.
Yes, exactly what Hamas wanted and intended. And they were very smart about what it was that they were doing. But in January of 1995, the U.S. administration had had enough with Hamas. On January 23rd, 1995, President Clinton signed Executive Order 12947, allowing for the designation of terror groups who threaten the Middle East peace process. And on January 25th, 1995, the Treasury Department published a list of terrorists, including Hamas and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and designated them as specially designated terrorists, along with a large number of other terror groups that threatened the Middle East peace process. Guess who was paying attention? The HLF and Mohammed El-Mazain were paying attention. On January 24th, 1995, Mohammed El-Mazain had a phone call with a man named Abu al-Bara. After greetings, Abu al-Bara said, "Did you hear the news or something on the CNN?" And Mohammed El-Mazain asked, "What's going on?" Abu Bara said that Abu Ahmad had called him and said that Clinton signed an order to freeze the assets of some Islamic organizations and persons who supported the Islamic Jihad movement and Hamas. And Mohammed El-Mazain asked, "Right now?" And Abu al-Bara said, "Yes. He is saying that there is some news on CNN. Turn it on and listen to it." Mohammed El-Mazain responded, "Okay, God's willing. Don't worry about it." In the immediate aftermath of the signing of these Hamas declarations, the Associated Press contacted Shukri Abu Bakr to ask him about the HLF's involvement. And they told him they interviewed Sheikh Jamil Hamami, remember the Hamas founder in the West Bank that we saw, who was also a fundraiser at one of the events.
Hello? السلام عليكم. وعليكم السلام. كيف الحال؟ يا هلا حياك الله. كيف العافية؟ الحمد لله. تمام. أنا محمد عندك؟ أيوه. العنوان. يا السلام عليكم. أهلا إبراهيم. كيف حالك؟ حياك الله. الله يبارك. كيف أموركم؟ كيف أخبارك؟ تمام. والله الحمد لله. الجو عندنا مطر وهنا البلد. والله؟ كيف أموركم؟ الله يسلمك. بعت لك فاكس صح؟ إيش الفاكس هذا؟ ها؟ إيه كله. هذا أساسي في الفاكس. كيف اللي فيه كله؟ اللي قلت امبارح. أيوه. الحين على الشيخ حمامي جايين من تلفزيون السائل وهيك عملوا منك مسألة. قال لهم هو كان والله يعطي العافية. خذوا تليفونهم ويسألوا عن فكرة. اتصلوا فيهم بس. إيه. لا طبعا هذا المكتب عندك. في بعض الناس تتصل يعني بعض الإعلام باختصار.
So Hamami was one of the Hamas founders in the West Bank. Is that right?
Yes.
And he raised money for the HLF.
Yes, we saw him in one of those early episodes at one of their festivals. And he also ran his own charitable organization called the Islamic Science and Culture Committee that the HLF funded. And they actually talked about that in the Philadelphia meeting as one of their organizations. Shukri Abu Bakr was very concerned about the media's interest and the fact that Jamil Hamami had made incriminating statements.
Do we have a copy of that AP article?
Yes. It was faxed to Mohammed El-Mazain from the HLF office in Richardson, Texas. So let's take a look at this article. It began by reporting the U.S. government's crackdown on extremist groups and goes directly into the interview of Jamil Hamami. Hamami, in the article, warned that the crackdown would increase hostility against the United States. And the article reported that Arafat praised Clinton's movement, saying Hamas and PIJ had claimed hundreds of Israeli lives and brought the Israel-PLO peace process to the brink of collapse. That was Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat. Hamami, in this article, admitted his school received money from the HLF, and the article reported an interview with Shukri Abu Bakr where he denied the HLF had connections with Hamas, which we know is false. In the article, terror experts were cited, and said that education organizations, health and welfare groups all serve Hamas propaganda and recruiting efforts, and that Hamas guerrilla fighters often find jobs in the charity organizations as teachers, drivers, and cooks, and use those places for various purposes, including as places to hide. So that's even back then. So the understanding that in 1995, that's how Hamas terrorist organization was operating.
So that article provides a lot of insight about how Hamas functioned. I can see why Shuku Abu Bakr would be concerned. I mean, 1995 got off to a pretty busy start for this group.
Yes, and it got busier. But I want to pause for a minute and show you a call between Mohammed El-Mazain, the chairman of the board of the HLF, who we saw in the beautiful operation call, and another attendee of the Philadelphia meeting about whom we've not spoken. His name was Mohammed El-Hanouti, and he was a big religious leader in New Jersey and a member of this infrastructure. I believe he may now be deceased. But regardless, in this call, although not related to Hamas per se as a terrorist organization, it shows the attitude of this group when it comes to terrorist attacks against the West.
So what were they discussing on this call?
They were discussing the first World Trade Center bombing in 1993 and how a newspaper article had come out claiming the FBI knew about it beforehand. They talked about another man who might have been involved in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and El-Mazain said he was, quote, one of the righteous ones. And the important part of this call, though, is when Mohammed El-Mazain was asked who actually carried out the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and he said, quote, I think it was a good person who did the bombing, end quote.
Did you say a good person?
A good person. So Israel wasn't the only enemy of Hamas. It was the West. Things were about to heat up in 1995. During this time period, Marzook and his family continued to reside here in the United States and travel in and out. Isn't that kind of crazy? Like, I mean, he was leading this terrorist organization, but he still lived here. But in July of 1995, months after the Hamas designation, Marzook and his family flew into JFK Airport coming home, and Marzook was detained and placed in extradition proceedings to Israel for the Hamas murders that had been committed in Israel of all of these people that we've seen in these suicide bombings. And when he entered through passport control at JFK and customs, Marzook's little black book, if you don't know what a little black book is, it's a log for phone numbers. Back in that day, we had to keep track of our phone numbers in these little telephone books. We didn't have smartphones. But anyway, his little black book was secreted in his wife's undergarments, but it was located and seized, and we'll take a look at it. It contained, in Arabic, hundreds of phone numbers, including those of Hamas leaders and Palestinian Islamic Jihad leaders. It included the number for the IAP office and for Shukri Abu Bakr and Ghassan al-Ashi and Mohammed El-Mazain, all of the HLF, Omar Ahmad of the IAP and CARE, and El Barassi, the Palestinian Committee leader, where all these documents were found, and Ahmed Yusuf of the UASR. They had all of their numbers. And he was detained pending the outcome of the extradition proceedings and submitted to various interviews with media outlets, actually, maintaining that Hamas was merely resisting the occupation and that they were freedom fighters.
I'm a political leader of Hamas. When you say political leader or political group, that means those people looking for a solution for their own people, looking for a solution that means in all of other means, if there is occupation, that means you have to resist that occupation by all of the means you have. If you can solve your problem, the Palestinians resist the occupation. They are freedom fighters. They are not making violence here or there. They're looking for their future. They're looking for independent. They're trying to solve their problem by themselves because the negotiation can't solve their problems.
During that period, Hamas continued its brutal suicide bombings in Israel. We will see a video from a July 1995 attack in Tel Aviv and a Jerusalem attack in August. And these videos are graphic. They were captured by the Associated Press.
לא להיכנס פה לסירה, כולם מתרחק אחורה.
אני ארדוף אחריך כל היום, תעבור אחורה בבקשה.
עד הקצה.
So in this Tel Aviv attack, 6 were killed, 32 were injured, and we see an August 1995 attack in Jerusalem here with 5 killed and around 80 injured, captured by the Associated Press.
That's right.
לשם, חבר לשם, כולם החוצה, רק החבלנים.
קדימה, אנשים, כולם שוטרים. אנחנו מבקשים לפנות. יד שמה, יד שמה. יד שמה, חבר'ה. בואו חולי, בואו. כולם להגיע.
During this time period, on August 29th, 1995, Mousa Abu Marzook was himself designated as a specially designated terrorist.
So did this arrest and these extradition proceedings bring more attention to the HLF and the IAP?
Yes, it did. Now, as a reminder, in the 1990s, the HLF and IAP were based in the Dallas area of North Texas. Richardson is a suburb of Dallas, along with the HLF-related company called Infocom that we've referenced, that Hassan Awashi ran. We'll talk about that later. And then ultimately, the IAP moved to Chicago from Dallas, Texas, but the HLF and Infocom stayed in Dallas. But in the mid-90s, they were in Dallas. Let's listen to this call between the HLF leaders, Shukri Abu Bakr and Hassan Awashi, in the wake of Marzook's arrest.
Hello?
Alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
Dallas Morning News اليوم كاتبة editorial. حاطة في فقرة في الإديتوريال إلهم يعني. في Dallas editorial. Headed Hamas leader deport him but not to Israel. بس لما تقرأ المقالة بالتفصيل في أحد الباراجرافات كاتبينها is referring to us in a way or another. It says, as the Oklahoma City bombing demonstrates, the homegrown variety of terrorists is quite capable of creating problems without adding to their number from abroad. Interestingly, the FBI has noted in the past that cells of Hamas organization are known to be operating even in North Texas. You know who's North Texas?
Yeah.
North Texas is Dallas. Should the government prove itself unable to deport Mr. Marzook, the message will be clear. America is an easy refuge for the world's persecuted terrorists.
ما أعتقدش يعني حاجة كان المفروض يكون defensive about it. رأي ضعيف جدا يعني مهلهل هذا.
بس لما يكتبوا cells of Hamas operating in North Texas What is that?
Yeah, maybe there are some.
There are some?
Do you know any?
No.
No, we don't know any. Maybe they know better.
Oh, so because they don't mention names.
No.
But you know who is in their mind, yeah?
Maybe, yeah.
But it's not maybe.
Not long after that call, Shukri Abu Bakr became convinced his phone was wiretapped and became increasingly security conscious, which was probably smart on his part. So this call took place between Shukri Abu Bakr and Mohammed al-Mazain of the HLF, and Shukri Abu Bakr is trying to convince Mohammed al-Mazain not to speak about things on the phone, and tells him, my phone has a cold. And Mohammed al-Mazain says, this is a cordless? And Shukri says, my telephone has a cold, man. I don't understand anything. And Mohammed al-Mazain, perplexed, says, I don't understand it. Shukri Abu Bakr says, okay, listen. We don't need to talk about people's honor over the phone. Let's talk tomorrow. My telephone has a cold.
His phone had a cold?
Yes, that's his code for Mohammed al-Mazain. My phone is bugged. Don't say anything stupid. My phone has a cold.
Okay, interesting. So let's go back to Marzook in U.S. prison. What was happening with that?
Well, while he was in custody, Khalid Mashal, the half-brother of HLF Federation Movement al-Qatar, assumed the position as chief of Hamas political bureau, and Marzook was moved down to deputy chief because, he was in jail. But he was still heavily involved in the political bureau leadership. But the Hamas political bureau, they held an office in Amman, Jordan at the time. And another one of the Hamas senior leaders was a man named Ibrahim Goshet. And he was in Amman, and he sent letters to members of Congress demanding that Marzook not be extradited to Israel, and warning of quote unquote serious repercussions if the U.S. continued to detain him or send him to Israel.
So was Marzook extradited to Israel?
In the end, no. The U.S. government elected to deport him instead to Jordan, where he joined other Hamas political bureau leaders and continued leading the terrorist organization.